Making a tile is a common beginning project for students in ceramics. I'm going to demonstrate a few basic ways to make clay tiles by hand methods and suggest some possible uses for these. Any beginner can make the tiles you will see. The methods are simple, but the results are pleasing, perhaps exciting, maybe sophisticated. Let's start out by cutting some tiles from a sheet of clay. These thickness guides are 1/4 of an inch thick. I'll be rolling out the clay on burlap using this homemade rolling pin of plaster with a reinforcing rod inserted at the time it was cast in a mailing tube. It is best to use rather stiff clay for this method. Being careful not to bend the clay or overhandle it, place it on a plaster bat or a board and peel off the burlap. Just at random, not trying for uniformity, horizontal and vertical cuts are made to create squares and rectangles of various sizes. Beginners are always concerned with preventing thin sheets of clay from warping. Here's the best tip I can give you. Handle the clay as little as possible. Roll it out, cut it, and leave it to dry. If the tile is handled excessively and bent like this, it will probably warp in drying like this. The clay seems to want to return to its former shape upon drying. When the sheet of clay has stiffened to leather hardness, that is, it looks and feels leathery, squares are broken apart and beveled slightly. This removes sharp edges and gives them a more finished appearance. Here's the way they look on the wall of our kitchen, cemented in place and grouted. Here's another use for cut tiles. Notice that in this round table there are This will be the center portion of the table. After this, I will make strips of clay in 5 different widths. The inner circle of tiles will be 2½ inches, then 2 3/4, 3 inches, 3 1/4, and this one will be 3 1/2 inches. Just like measuring on paper. Most of the cuts are made on a slight angle, so that these tiles will be a little wedge-shaped. When the clay is completely dry, pieces may be stacked 3 high on a kiln shelf for bisque firing, or pots may be fired sitting on a single layer of tiles to conserve space. Glazing of the bisque-fired pieces may be done several ways, but brushing is easiest and less messy, requires less cleanup. I am using 2 coats of glaze. Of course, in the glaze firing, only 1 layer of tiles may be placed on a kiln wash shelf, and glazed portions must not touch. Ceramic tile mastic is used to cement tiles to plywood, plaster, or concrete blocks. Pieces may be buttered individually with mastic, or a uniform depth of mastic may be spread with this tooth spreader. When tiles are set, they are grouted. This is white tile grout, which is squeegeed into the spaces with this piece of cardboard. After grouting is completed, cleaning up will take several spongings, and the beauty of the glazed tiles is again revealed. The result is a nice sunburst effect. Oh, I might tell you that this design was inspired by a beautiful little dandelion. These are art students, and this is the wall. It's not very interesting. Nobody pays much attention to it. So we decided to liven it up with some large tiles. We made this form of plywood, which everyone in the class will use to make 3 or 4 tiles, so that this will be a class project. Coarse clay with lots of grog is pressed firmly into the form, and the excess is scraped away. Each student is to insert small bits of colored glass into the surface of the clay. Now the students have considerable choice as to the amount of glass used, the colors, and the placement. When all the glass is pressed into place, the plywood form comes right off and the 4 square strips are removed. In the firing, the pieces of glass melt and spread out from their original position. We are applying these squares to the concrete block wall with a thin coating of cement mortar. All the glass, especially the deeper pools, will fracture and crackle, giving a jewel-like effect, and frequently a silverish halo will develop around the edge of the glass areas. Here's a Mosaic Wall, which was made as a class project. For this, we made round and oval-shaped tiles, which are reminiscent of beach pebbles and contain the same fascination as the rewarding discovery of smooth, worn stones found on a beach. The flat, oval stones, shaped by endless grinding of surf and sand, inspired the tiles which were used on our wall. 22 students made tiles for the wall and helped cement them in place. The pieces vary in thickness. Many are textured or have designs. For this reason, the wall is not grouted. Most of the tiles are unglazed. Mixtures of buff and red clays plus a little manganese were used to produce the earthy colors from buff to dark brown and gray. The wall is located in a busy stairwell. I am frequently amused to find students with their noses pressed close to the wall, studying each piece, making new and interesting discoveries. To make oval tiles, balls of clay are made and flattened with a rolling pin, using those thickness guides again. Use rather soft clay for this. Stiffer clay will produce cracks around the edges of the tiles. These edges are naturally rounded and do not require beveling. Here's a 7th grader's trivet which he made from round tiles. Using bisque clay stamps and found objects, all sorts of interesting designs may be quickly produced. Here's a small gear. While many of the tiles are crudely done, the total effect is a richness which is very exciting. This table was made from smooth tiles which were left over from the wall. This 1st grade boy enjoys playing with his turtle. And painting pictures of turtles. So with the clay pieces which he made and glazed, he assembled a fanciful turtle. Here's a portion of that wall which you saw behind the title in the beginning of the film. To create this type of tile, a rolling pin is not needed because differences in thickness and texture are desired for richness and variety. With this thin-bladed fettling knife, random widths are cut . Ends are trimmed up and the pieces placed on a plaster bat to dry. Glazed and installed, they look like this. For texture, a screwdriver handle. And that little gear again. Here's a stamp with the outline of a fish. Look like a fossil? A piece of wood. And these clay stamps. A high school boy made a fish from tiles of this type. Fine works of art, some of great size, can be created, one small piece at a time.